Welcome back to Undisputed. We are now joined by Fox Sports NFL analyst Greg Jennings, who is in Minneapolis. Greg, you've been on my mind. I grew up very, very close to where you're living right now, and I've been thinking about you. And I know that your wife has a business downtown Minneapolis. You chose to be there to watch out for it. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the situation and what you've been seeing and experiencing in Minneapolis?
First and foremost, appreciate it. Appreciate the thoughts and the prayers. It is real. And for me, as not only a Black man, but as a father, as a husband, as a business owner, there's a lot of mixed emotions about everything that's transpired. Shannon, I listened to the last segment, and you mentioned cause and effect. And there's a cause and effect to everything. And what ties people to either the cause or either the effect is their relationship. And my relationship in this has been not only that I'm a Black man and I've been on the end of racial profiling as a Black man, but now my wife's business is in harm's way because of the effect of the cause that we visibly were able to see from law enforcement with George in regards to George Floyd. And so I was raised as an individual, as a young man, to learn how to put out fires, but at the same time, how to prevent a fire. And in the midst of where fires were spreading and just kind of bursting everywhere on the scene, I felt like I was one that wanted to prevent the fire from happening versus having to respond and by putting it out. And that was what I was doing with my wife's store, along with a couple other gentlemen that manned the store with me. And it's been an interesting dynamic because from an outside perspective and seeing Stack and communicating with Stack and Steven Jackson through text message and taking my daughters, my older two daughters, along with my wife down to the Justice Rally in honor of George Floyd and having them experience it and just seeing their emotions and their response, I felt like it was something that unfortunately is needed. And the response that has come of it, whatever way people have decided to respond, it was needed for them. Not that I'm in agreement with some of the arson and the vandalism and the looting, but I will say this. I had to ask myself this question this morning. Am I more upset and bothered by the arson and the looting and the acts of vandalism or by the murder? And for me, I have to remain with my eyes on that, and that's the murder, because that's the cause. That's the reason why people are showing their emotion and they're acting out in whatever way that they feel that they need to in this moment, and I have to respect that.
And I think that's the biggest thing, Greg, when I'm hearing you, and I get it. I totally get it. Like you said, I mean, that's home for you. But for me, when I look at it, I'm like, hold on. And we see a lot of this. Yeah, that was bad how they did George, and he shouldn't have died like that. But what does that building have to do? What does looting have to do? But when you get so upset, and you've been upset as long as Black America has been upset, you lose. It's like you go dark, and you throw caution to the wind. You like, I've been living and burning in hell. They've been looting. If you look at the two biggest looting happen in the last 15 years, the recession, when they bailed out big business, they looted America. And this last stimulus package, $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion, that none of it got to small minority Black businesses. We got a $1,200 stimulus check, and there are some corporations that got $3 billion. That's the looting of America. But Greg, so let me ask you a question. So when you go down there, are you standing out front and you saying, bro, this is a Black-owned business, man. Don't bother this, man. I'm sorry for the pain that you're going through. Because that's what happened a lot in Atlanta in 1992 with the Rodney King. A lot of Black-owned businesses put Black-owned or stood out in front of their business, and they were unharmed.
We did. Immediately I told my wife to print up some signs, Black-owned business. But at the same time, I felt like we needed to do more. We needed to make sure that the community and those who were directly impacted knew that we were standing with them too. So we wanted to put something to honor George Floyd. So we put both signs side by side. But yeah, I stood outside her building, but I also at night, I stood inside because one of the things that I wanted to make sure people understood, and those who were with me, who I decided to come down there and be with me and stand with me. And I will share this. They were armed, I was not, but I was comfortable with that. I wanted them to understand that we're not coming down here to incite or ignite anything further. We're coming to be a deterrent. We're coming to diffuse anything that may potentially happen, and to ultimately, if we encounter someone who is getting ready to potentially vandalize a building or loot, to kind of change their heart, change their mind. Like, look, that's not what we're all about. And, I was fortunate. I didn't have to do those things. I didn't have to stand up and guard the building where someone was actually about to come. We had some pedestrians walking by that, we ran to the windows and we were out at the doors, but they continued to move on. I will say this, every building around my wife's store was potentially either vandalized when it comes to graffiti or whatever the case may be, or they experienced and it had looting take place within their businesses. And I'm so blessed that I decided to make a stand and take a stand for my wife, and she did the same thing. And I'm also, and she can say this better than I can. She found it hugely significant that those who were committing the acts, whomever they were, all races didn't matter, decided to overlook her store. It means a lot. It really does, in spite of the situation.
So, Greg, how did you feel about those shops next door getting vandalized? How did it? Were you okay with that in the end?
No, I was not. I am not. If I were to show you images right now, every shop around my wife's shop is boarded up, plywood, windows covered, and we decided not to do that. And I understand why they did it. They did it because they wanted to protect what was on the inside, but they had a fear that they were targeted. And we did not. We have that same fear. Every single morning since this has taken place, I get up, I pray, and I tell my wife, babe, I'll be right back, because I run out the house to go downtown to go and look and assess the store, both inside and out. And that's the reality that we're in. It's not going to change anytime soon. The National Guards are literally a block away from my wife's store. And even with that, there's still this sense of, but I got to go and check. And that's what we as the Black community specifically, have always dealt with as a Black man. Yes, we see the uniforms and the costumes that these law enforcement officers wear, but we still got to protect ourselves. We still got to stand and be the guard and protectors for our families, our children. We have to be that everlasting voice that they hear of encouragement, of lifting, to where they can understand that this too will pass. This too shall pass. And if it doesn't, you have to continue and remain diligent and willing to stand and endure.
Think about what you said, Greg. You said that the National Guard is a block away from your wife's store, and you still feel the need to go check on it. That's how Black America feels. Although those are law enforcement and there are police officers that's there to protect and serve, I still got to watch myself because I still feel unprotected. Greg, I'm glad that your store was unharmed. But please, please don't value artifacts and possessions more than life. That's all. I understand that was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but you have insurance and those things could be replaced. George ain't coming back. Trayvon ain't coming back. Walter Scott, Alton Sterling, Althea Jefferson, Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, they're not coming back, Greg. That's all I'm saying. And I understand when you pour your hard work and tears, and I think as I've gotten older, Greg, I've come to realize this because when I was younger, Greg, cars and things of that, it meant something to me until I realized, hold on, what the hell I got insurance for? If something happens, they steal it, it can be replaced. So I'm glad that everything worked out for in your best, in the well-being and the best interest of you and your wife and the store. But so many times people will value the building and they'll forget about Big George. And I don't want that to happen. I don't ever want a building or an artifact to have more value than human life.
And I will say this in response to what you just said. We will never value the building and what we have inside the building more than what has happened in the reality that we live in. However,
right,
the same reason why those who are out on the front lines in that neighborhood where I take my daughter to go and play inner city tennis twice a week, they are standing. They know George isn't coming back. They know Trayvon Martin isn't coming back, but they still feel like they got to stand and they have to put themselves in a position to where potentially, you know what, my life may be at risk. You know why, Shannon? Because as a Black American, it already is. That's just how we feel.
Yep.
When I get pulled over by the police officer, there's an emotion that goes on within me that my heart races and anxiety pulses, and then I have to try to mask that when he comes to the door because my pride won't let me show that I'm a little afraid, that I'm scared. So I stand up and I buck a little bit, not to ignite or to incite for him to think that I'm going to harm him or challenge him, but I'm not going to let you put your knee on my neck in this moment. And that's not what happened to me or happens to me literally, but essentially, that's what they tried to do.
So, Greg, sum this up for us. You're a smart man. We're all sick and tired of all the words, the platitudes, something must be done. What must be done? Give me a specific fix that you would like to see put into action sooner than later.
To be honest with you, Skip, I don't have that answer. And the one thing that I would share is that we all have a tool that we can use. And right now you're hearing mine. We just heard Steven Jackson's. We've been hearing so many. We have to continue to use the tool of our voices. There are power in words. And if we can unify our words as Americans, not just Black community, white community, if we can start to speak the same language, what someone listens to and hears from me, they may not be willing to take in. But if they hear it from you, Skip, because you look like them, that is the commonality that they have. They may lend an ear to what you're saying that may be the very thing that I've been harping and been trying to project. So if we can unify our voices on some level, I think that is where we start, and that is when we will start to really see changes being made in our government, within our governments, when it comes to policies that have been in place that should not be in place. We can build things up with our voices, and we can tear things down with our voices.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.